Hey, everybody, welcome, welcome, welcome to another session of Soul Therapy Live, where we will be conducting part three of our series dealing with faith, life, as well as a lot of other great things that are going to be very beneficial to you as far as understanding what success actually means. And so let's go ahead and pray. And then I got one little treat for you, and then we'll move on from there. Lord God, we just thank you for this time. We thank you for allowing for us to be able to come together once again to learn more about what it's like to be a follower of Jesus Christ, living life every day practically. Help us to be able to discern right from wrong and also from almost right as well. Help us to become more in tune with you and your ways, and also to get into proper alignment with your will. In Jesus' name, I pray. Amen. Amen. So, one of the things I wanted to do before I get started is yes, another dad joke, everybody. You're not going to get away from this because it's about living life, dad jokes, and other curious things. So I won't tell you the one that my significant other told me today, but I did steal her joke and tell it to my one of my other audiences, and it was a great hit. It was a hit that a lot of people laughed. I got somebody who actually sent me a text message, and then, of course, the rest of them gave a thumbs down. So, because you guys deserve additional punishment, how about this one? The pony couldn't sing because it was a little hoarse. That's one of those Rodney Dangerfield. That's one of those Rodney Dangerfield. Um, um, uh, One of those Rodney Dangerfield things that we got, or what I would call a one-liner. I got two more. The second one is the following: cosmetic surgery used to be taboo, but now when you talk about Botox, no one raises an eyebrow. Uh, Okay. I don't know about that one. Let's see if there's anything else. And then I don't want to say that one. How about this one? Want to hear a joke about paper? Never mind. It's wearable. I still haven't redeemed myself just yet. Okay. Not just yet. All right. And then last but not least, just one more. I used to be a baker, but I couldn't make enough dough. Oh my goodness. Well, everybody, once again, that's all that I have for you. I think we got a little bit of crickets for that one. So, as we get into tonight's teaching, if you will, don't forget to share the message, share, like, and subscribe, and let somebody know that Soul Therapy Live is on and popping on this particular beautiful Wednesday evening. So let me go ahead and give out my own little share button and let people know exactly what's going on in the neighborhood, and then we'll go ahead and move on from there. All right. All right. So as we get into tonight's teaching, I wanted to, or tonight's podcast, um, one of the things I wanted to do, especially as we continue our series, Faithful, Focused, and Fruitful God's Principles for Everyday Living, Part 3, one of the things that I was really thinking about was, we talked about quite a bit over the last couple of weeks about our morning routines, consistency over intensity. In addition to that, we talked about time management and how to manage, really master our schedules. And then, of course, we ended the segment or a little bit of interim or midway point in regards to lifelong learning and how that can make you much better in regards to how you can navigate through this life, your job, your career, your family, and the whole nine yards. And so this is also definitely a very near and dear topic to my heart. And again, welcome to all of our Soul Therapy Live audience that is on the line as well. So it's almost like even with this podcast is about learning. It's about learning more about yourself and also how you can function in this world, at least at your best and highest use. So I got a verse of scripture that I'm going to repeat from last week, and it is from Proverbs chapter 1, verse 5. Proverbs chapter 1, verse 5 says the following. It says, a wise man will hear and increase learning, and a man of understanding will attain wise counsel. So that is, of course, very, very, very important We want to make sure that as we begin to talk about things and we begin to learn things, we not only dig into the books, which of course is very, very important, but we also want to make sure that as we dig into the books, we also make sure that we dig into the relationships that are also around us so that um, when we are um, bouncing ideas and thinking about specific things, then you will actually have someone to vet those specific ideas to make sure that they are on point and that they actually make sense and mean something. So here's one little thing that I wanted to refresh our memories on. Number one, learning never stops and growth stops when learning stops. So we need to make sure that we continue to reinvest in ourselves through reading books, again, listening to podcasts or watching video-based podcasts like yours truly, attending conferences, taking courses, and also welcoming constructive feedback. I've been to several conferences and I've learned a lot from those conferences as far as the content that is presented there, whether they're in the sacred world or also in the secular world. But a lot of the reasons why another reason why I like to go to conferences is because sometimes, especially if you're in the same industry or in the same field, again, whether that's sacred, secular, IT, education, whatever it may be, you start seeing some of the same faces over and over again, right? Some of those faces that you see in those places are individuals who are on the same path that you are in. And then other faces that you see there are faces that emulate where you actually want to be, right? Goals, you know how they say hashtag goals. Well, that's definitely one of the benefits of attending conferences. And then, of course, there's taking courses. Like, I'll give you like one particular course that I just took recently. And I admit that I was only halfway listening because I was so distracted. Because I'm one of those people too that I like to read, but I like to read in small chunks, like micro-sized chunks. I have, if you gave me like a book or a novel or something like that, then nine times out of 10, I'm probably not going to read it from cover to cover. Give me a movie, give me some of the cliff notes, or if I do have to read it, it'll be a note here or note there. I like short cliff notes, just small short form. That's almost like the acronym TLDR, too long, didn't read. There's a bunch of people that are like that. And it's even exacerbated in our moment in time, especially because people are or have been conditioned with a lot of 2 minute or less videos, right? Unless it is some type of video to where there may be that is so attention grabbing, like, like a movie, or there's getting ready to be some type of confrontation or interaction at the very end. But most of the content, no matter how well published it is, the maximum amount of time is about 2 minutes or so. And when we're doom scrolling on social media, you basically take those 2 minutes and then it turns into an exact movie. But very rarely will you um, find that same video again unless you start following that person. And then a lot of times what ends up happening is that that person is not really a content creator. They did one thing that was funny, and then the rest of their content is just like average or below average. And so but then there's other creators that you subscribe to their page, and then they have constant content that is something that you can actually benefit from as well. So one of the courses that I took just recently, and even our church just took recently, was dealing with AI. We went through a course that taught us about Copilot, how it is supposed to be used, being able to upload documents to it, being able to extract information from it, creating different graphics or videos, understanding engineering prompts, and you may have even seen this on TikTok to where it says, "So what's the prompt?" The prompt is, okay, you want me to give you some information. What are you asking and what are you looking for? So even the vernacular and the language that people are using today is starting to be influenced by the same language that people input into an AI engine, whether that's Anthropic, OpenAI, Copilot, Claude, DeepSeek, any number of the ones that are, of course, ChatGPT, any of the number of ones that are out there. So that was one class that I had members of our church, leaders and the members of our church take, at the beginning of the actual year. And then most recently, I went through training at my job in to get more immersed in AI, to become an AI pioneer, engineering pioneer of where I'm at. And I took another course that was kind of sketchy. I was a little bit janky with it, right? But it was about windsurf, and I think the parallel software to that is called Cursor. So windsurf is a really good application. And get this, y'all, it's like one of those applications to where you really don't have to know in-depth programming, but you still have to be very um, aware of what how technology works from the front end to the back end. So I can't say that you could just go into it just dry. You at least need to have some type of background in it. But as I was telling um, um, a very close friend of mine yesterday that typically in IT you have two sides. You have a infrastructure side or the builder side, and then of course the other side is the programming side. Very rarely will you have somebody that is really good at both of them. If they are, then they will likely be a solutions architect that leans on the development side. But usually you have a strength in either in one or the other. But because of AI and a lot of the advancements that have been made, you can actually use a prompt to actually create an application that does several different things and sandbox it. If you could create demos, it is like just when I say it's out of this world, it is out of this world. It is a really wonderful product that I hope to demo to some people where I work very, very, very soon. But I would not be able to get to that point unless I started doing research or started taking classes and courses in other areas to kind of prepare myself for the paradigm shift that is going on out there in the real world. Not only is that the case from a technology standpoint, but you all know that I also love biblical things. So there was this one particular app that I downloaded, and I think it was called Bible Study, to where it takes you through Strong's Concordance and it looks at different words, whether it's in the Hebrew, Aramaic, or the actual Greek, which is what the scriptures were written in, so that you could get the proper context of words and phrases in their historical grammatical context. I know I said context twice, but I wanted to emphasize that word context because what often happens a lot of times when we read, whether that's the Bible or sometimes even on social media, you see that quite a bit, right? Have you ever seen on social media to where somebody's making a comment, especially if it's dealing with babies, kids, um, pet puppies, politics, even if it's something that's very, very friendly and lighthearted, you have to, and I'm using the word prompt, the actual wording to cover caveats. What is a caveat? A caveat is a qualifier or a twist within something that you're saying that may need additional clarification. Why? Because, as I shared with you all some time ago, that the average person in the United States, I would say about what it was, the statistic was like 50% or 65% of the people in the United States, please correct me, I have no problem being corrected, in the United States read at sixth grade level. It's either between 45 to 60%, 45 to 60% of the people in the United States read at the sixth grade level. So that means that if you're looking at medical records, if you're looking at the Bible, which the Bible is not elementary reading at all, you could see why sometimes people would rather rely on a pastor or a preacher that has a very simplistic message because people oftentimes comprehend in the way that they read. Let me help you. People often comprehend information the same way that they read. And the same way that oftentimes people read is the same way that they speak. Go figure, right? So there's some people that need things to be simplified and elementary in nature. And there are certain topics that need that. And then there's other people that like things to be more verbose and has a little bit more detail to it, right? So I don't need a football player to understand War and Peace, but I do need a lawyer to be able to read hundreds of pages of documents because they're trying to make sure that I don't get sued for, making a mistake in regards to my patent, right? And there's a duplicate product out there, and I want to make sure that I'm clear in that specific space. So the type of reading is going to change depending on what platform that you're coming from. So I learned about windsurf. I learned about some more about AI, and the other thing that I'm learning right now is getting even more skills in regards to project management and of course with agile methodology. So all of those things are things that I did not go to school for, but anytime that you're a part of a job or you're working or you're just trying to educate yourself, you have to be open to learning new things. If you have not expanded your horizon or your vocabulary in quite some time, then you really need to take some time out to force yourself to read, to do some research, because there are going to be scenarios, there's going to be situations that you're going to have to do intensive research so that you won't be overwhelmed, because sometimes you can't just afford to get somebody to tell you everything that needs to be told about a specific subject. And the other times you don't have the time, or even other people don't have the time to be able to give you an answer, right? You have to develop those research skills for yourself, but you have to do research the right way. A good researcher, or somebody who's seeking the truth, especially as you're learning and you're trying to get more educated, because it's like my area, right? You have to be able to be open to um, have competing ideas and remove implicit bias when you're faced with objective truth about a specific topic, right? Whether that's science, it's biblical, it's medicine. We all have these preconceived notions that come from, or that may influence us, especially where we live and what we saw, what um as we were growing up, that kind of shape our worldview in regards to things. I even heard something the other day that says that, you know, when you're 22 years old, or when you turn 22 years old, I'll say 25 years old, after you turn 25 years old, the influence that your upbringing has on you can be greatly reduced by how you conduct yourself from that point forward, right? You just have to take the time out to dig through some of the beneficial things that may have influenced you, or even some of the traumatic things that influence you. But it is that as at that point where you can start making your own decisions and becoming the person that God has called you to be, or becoming the person that you strive to be from that point forward. All of those things may have happened, but there comes a point in time to where you will either emulate what has happened to you, or you're going to disassociate what has happened to you. And that's good or bad. Either way, you have to be intentional on doing the proper work, the proper research, taking a course, hearing about different ways to learn and how to comprehend things so that you can become the best that you can be. I'm very careful when I actually say the best that you could be, because there was a point in time when I used to say words, and this, this pop psychology, anything's kind of like influential, but you may even heard in past messages where I say, become the best version of yourself. Now, that seems like it's okay, but the reason why I stopped saying best version of myself is for two reasons, right? From a science reason, which is more, you know, not as um it's not as controversial. But from a science and a technology reason, anytime you have a different software version come out and it was a very minor update, like 1.1 to 1.2, you would see very rarely any kind of significant change, right? Right. But then there's other times when there's a software update and it's a major change, a major interface change, kind of like with this specific platform that I'm using to actually stream this particular broadcast. There was an update that came out maybe like 2 days ago, and it changed some of the graphical user interface, or the interface. So there were certain buttons in certain places that I didn't see before, and I had to get up to speed. Up had to get up to speed fairly quickly. So that part of version history in the computer world, that part makes sense because a computer is an inanimate object. But then, as I learn and as I read, the other side of that is there's a lot of people, especially for those of you that are um, Christian and followers of Jesus. When we say a better version of ourselves, the first thing that I started thinking about when I started doing the research is a lot of the talk, especially therapeutic talk that came out over the last 5 years. And a lot of it was mixed in with Hinduism and chakras. And you remember everybody was talking about bad karma, good karma, all of that stuff was going on quite a bit for the last 5 to 7 years. And then now it's starting to thin out a little bit more, right? Because things are being brought to the surface. So now I'm very careful on saying those words because I did more research and I did more reading into other cultures and other religions and how you can have one version like the Avatar. The Avatar is basically based off of Hinduism, almost in a sense Buddhism, right? To where you have this particular version of Avatar, and then you have a different version of Avatar, and then you have a better version of yourself. And so when it comes to enlightenment, that's why they believe in reincarnation. So because you keep on coming back as a better version of yourself, and you keep on having to do a do over until you finally reach the point of enlightenment or the highest state. Now, if you did not know that, then when you say the words, "I want to become a better version of myself," you it would seem like they wouldn't align because you just didn't know. But now that you know, or when you study, you take certain courses on world religions and the like, now I take pause in that. So now I would say, hey, when you die, according to the scriptures, it's appointed the man once to die and then the judgment. You don't get a chance to do a do over, right? Unless God brings you back to life after you pass away, you still the same you. More than likely, it'll be a little bit of damage in there, right? But there's only one life to live. According to the Christian, the biblical worldview, you have only one life to live. So now instead of saying better version of myself, we're going to say become all that God wants you to be, and that you have to work hard on on certain things that you may think about and what you're going through. Okay, you can always become a better person, but you can't become a better version of yourself because that means that there's two different copies. No, it's the same person. It's just that now you've learned more and you've educated yourself more. Does that make sense? Okay, I just wanted to park it there just for a minute. Now, with that, that's like me giving myself some constructive feedback. When you want to grow and when you want to learn, you have to be willing to take what you know currently and then vet it or examine it or compare it to an authoritative type of source. Why is that important? Because there's a tremendous amount of ignorance that is out in our world. Not only that, there's also a thirst for information, but sadly, not the wisdom that should be coupled along with that so that you can really see the picture as it should be. So when you are um, trying to become better, trying to develop healthy habits as a successful person, you want to submit yourself to people who have been there, done that, and got the T-shirt and have your best interest in mind. Now, when I say a best interest in your mind, a person that has your best interest in mind is not the person that's going to say yes to every single idea, every single approach, every single project that you have thought of. There are going to be some ideas that will be accepted, and then there's going to be other ideas that's going to be rejected. A lot of times you're going to be turned down a lot more for your ideas and projects that you may have in the workplace or in ministry or even other areas in your life than you will have successes. But when you do have those successes, you can really be grateful for those things occurring, and you can actually amplify and multiply the times that your ideas get pushed to the forefront because you've learned a lot from the past mistakes. When I worked at Amazon several years ago, there was, I would say about 3 or 4 years ago, when I first got there, they had this philosophy called every day is day one. That means that you always just be excited. It's a very intense environment, but everything is day one. And one of the trainings that they gave us on day one when I flew out to Seattle at that moment in time for AWS, Amazon company, is that they took us through a training where we had to learn how to write the Amazon way. And I was like, what in the world is the Amazon way? What does this mean? And what does it talk about? Well, there's the way that I used to write narratives, coming from college. and being in IT or in education for several years. And then there's this way that if you want to be a manager or leader for that particular organization, you had to master context and the proper use of punctuation and commas so that people would not misconstrue specifically what you are saying. Because at an organization like that, that has all of these hundreds of millions of dollars flowing through its corridors and products and services, a lot of times people look for loopholes or ways to penetrate that specific company just by the language or the statements that are being used. In other words, if you don't write properly, you could open yourself up to a lawsuit. Wow, look at that. Because this one particular person or employee, which represents the entire company as an ambassador, was not able to articulate their thoughts very well in this particular writing as a leader, or I'm getting ready to do this conference and I'm getting ready to speak to hundreds and hundreds of people or thousands of people at reInvent conference, have that every single year. 10,000 people show up. The what you say, seasoned experts and people from the industry actually seize upon those words, and then it goes into articles. And then if it's sound, then those articles are good talking points. But if it is flawed, then you get questioned on it heavily. And sometimes those questions can send you down a rabbit hole of intense embarrassment. So we had to go through that course in order to write things a specific way. And then I looked at the way I thought I wrote pretty good, but then I was like, okay, now that I see this, I got to step my game up, right? And when I submitted my particular paragraph, I would get the feedback from that. Another example is that while I was at that particular company, if you wanted a promotion, you couldn't get a promotion just because you asked your immediate boss. The person that was above your immediate boss had to vouch for you. Go figure. Very, very, very different culture, right? It's kind of like me and my specific role, and that yes, I have a supervisor, but the director is the one who has to vouch for me. So that means that I had to learn, get constructive feedback, and develop a relationship with not only my immediate manager, but their manager. Because why would you even do that? Why would that be necessary? Because they had a philosophy, like many other companies that are very successful, that whatever role that you desire to be in, you need to function in that role currently. And if I'm functioning in the role that my manager is in right now, somebody on that equal level could not evaluate you properly. Only somebody that is above the level that you want can evaluate you properly or give you feedback. And so a lot of times we would have to write out our own promotional documents. These are the things that I've done. These are the people that I know. And then we had to get feedback from 3 to 5 people to give us feedback in that specific document so that we could format it properly and then submit it. And either it will work or it will not work. It worked for me one time. I got promoted at Amazon, which is not an easy thing by any stretch of the imagination to do. Um, one time when I was there, and it was a very, very, very intense experience. Anytime like that, right? But I wouldn't have learned that unless I took different courses, educated myself, and also got proper feedback. Knowledge becomes wisdom when it is applied. So, from an educational standpoint, I've said before and I'll say it again, and I learned this from a class that I took many, many years ago when it comes to teaching adult learners. When you turn 18 years old, as an example, and I've said this many times before, when you turn 18, when it comes to listening, at least for the average person, when you turn 18 and somebody's having a conversation with you, you only retain about 20% of what you hear. And then after that, it's on a decline. So you lose like maybe 1 to 2% of information that you have retained just in a casual conversation. That's why podcasts are so wonderful, because you can rewind and then you could take notes and you could rewind the point over and over again. We had, when I was in college, we didn't have cellular phones and all these smartphones. We just had regular Casio phones or flip phones, and we had a handheld tape recorder to where we just put the tape recorder on the desk of the actual professor, and we press record, and they would just talk away. And then we would take that same recording, take it home, and then just play it, and then rewind it and rewind it and rewind it, because a lot of people don't have photographic. I thought I had a photographic memory. To a certain extent, I do. But when it comes to words and things like that, nah, let me go ahead and rewind the tape. Let me go ahead and go back over that again and again and again until you finally get it. Why is that important? Because what I learned in that class years ago is that memorization is the lowest form of learning, right? It is the lowest form of learning. So just memorizing something doesn't mean that you've learned anything. Where are you supposed to go today? I'm supposed to go to the doctor and get what? Get my particular medical bill straightened out. But then if I somebody ask you why, then you're like, uh-oh, uh-oh. I didn't think about that. I didn't go that far. So more than likely you didn't learn anything. So memorization is the lowest form of learning. But if you really want to show how much you've learned, whether it's in class or even if you're doing some self-study, then the best form of learning or the highest form of learning is actually synthesis, which is where you have a topic that you've been studying and then you apply it in real time. So when I was embarking upon this new skill set with AI and creating a program using the Claude AI engine, right? I was like, okay, how am I going to do this? How am I going to approach this? So I had to think to myself, okay, well, I've been in IT for a couple of decades now. Let me see if I can lean on some of that experience so that I can approach this very judiciously. Maybe use one of those lawyer type words. So I approached it very judiciously, and then things just started pouring out. It was so overwhelming, or the outpour of my knowledge that I've acquired and synthesized over the years was so overwhelming until my sweet wife says, "Andre, you've been on." Doing this stuff for work for about 7 or 8 hours. And I was like, I just can't stop. This is so exciting. Look at this. And I brought the computer downstairs and said, look at this program that I came up with. And if this is so successful, then XYZ could potentially happen. And she's like, a digital vacations. It was such a very proud moment for me, especially when you hear so much information about when you get older, then your brain start getting stale and you start forgetting things and you can't learn anything or you can't teach an old dog new tricks. But I don't believe that. I don't believe that's true. I believe that as long as you have a mind that can comprehend and that you exercise this mind as opposed to entertaining it all the time, then you'll start growing more and more synapses inside of your brain. And then the more that you read, the more that you comprehend, the more you conversate, the more that you study. It is said, or there's a lot of medical studies say that it actually prevents many mental degenerative type of diseases that people experience as they get older because your brain is like a muscle. Right? Right. Let this mind be in you, which is also in Christ Jesus. So Jesus conversed in the temple. He had conversations. He taught. And some of the best form of learning is when you teach others because you can't teach what you don't know, right? So he was always constantly teaching. They called him rabbi. He was a master teacher. He was God, but he was also the flesh. His humanity studied at the temple, but his divinity taught those same concepts flawlessly, right? Had the information, had divine wisdom, put those things together, and it could truly be transformation. The next piece of that I wanted to share with you also is some ideas, or you could put your response in the chat, right? What book has impacted your life the most? For me, I would say it was really two books, right? Course, the number one book is going to be the Bible, and then the other one was what is it? How Africa Shaped the Christian Mind. That was the other very transformational books. There was other books that I read before, like The Destruction of Black Civilization from years ago while I was in college. I remember that one, and there was other books that my dad used to have. I don't remember the names of all of them, but those that the ones that were most impactful was how Africa Shaped the Christian Mind, and also the Bible in and of itself, which, of course, as a pastor, you have to read constantly. You constantly have to read, you constantly have to see things from different perspectives and the historical, grammatical context. Very, very layered book, lots of reading. A lot of my vocabulary actually increased when it came to learning the actual scriptures. So, oh, you said so. I see some other stuff inside of the chat. What you got? The Bible and who loved my cheese? Oh, you mean who moved my cheese? Because L and M are close to each other. Okay. All right. So I remember that who moved my cheese, but I actually remember that book. That's a good talking point too. So, who moved my cheese was a book. It's an older book now, but I remember reading that book or hearing about that book. It was 2002, 2003 time frame that I started hearing about that book. And it was a book about learning how to adapt to change. If you're a person, and that book was usually sent out to a lot of people when there was getting ready to be an organizational realignment, layoffs and promotions and lateral moves and demotions, all that stuff. Whenever there's going to be, or if there's a merger and acquisition, a lot of times people would have to learn how to change in those environments. Either you're going to move it or you're going to lose it. Either you're going to adapt, or as my former boss would say, you're either going to adapt or die. And that's kind of ironic, though, right? So a lot of times when it comes to change, one of the books actually taught about how you can embrace change and how it can really catapult you into where you want to be in regards to your job, or at least open up opportunities for you. Being open to change. If you were rigid and stuck in your ways, then it was going to be very, very difficult for you to adapt to the new environment. What many people would see as great opportunities for growth, other people can sometimes see it until they read that book, can sometimes see it as a threat to what made them great in the first place. Right. I've seen that it happens every cycle at every single job. If you're not constantly learning, constantly developing yourself, constantly accelerating yourself, then it's not going to then you're not going to be able to keep up or sustain success for an extended period of time. Oh, another one, Robert T. Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and of course the Bible. I remember Robert T. Kiyosaki. That was definitely a really good book. That's definitely as far as having a good wealth mindset, right? And of course, those books are supposed to give us information, but you know what really makes those books good? Actually doing it, actually doing what the book teaches, right? And embracing exactly what it teaches as well. And of course, there's other. Oh, okay, if you can't think of any books, that means you need to start reading. Jamar, you got to start reading. You need to pick up something that is going to challenge you. Um, and it's hard to do it, right? Especially because we have these devices, right? We look at these devices and they give us a lot of information. But even if you love the tablet, open up Kindle, get you a book, and then start reading it. If you're going to watch movies that are educational. I know there's a lot of us that love documentaries, right? But even when it comes to documentaries, still question the documentaries. Everybody should have a healthy level of skepticism. Always have a healthy level of skepticism. Unhealthy skepticism is when you see everything but you believe nothing. I can hear everything, but I trust nothing. But having an unhealthy skepticism can be very, very destructive. Because if you can't trust anybody, then you can't even trust yourself. If you can't trust any information, then that means that then you're not going to feel comfortable with having objective truth being a part of your living social dynamic. How about this question? Who is also mentoring you at this moment in time? Who could that be? It could be an older brother, older sister, parent. If you have that type of relationship with them, it could be a pastor, a leader, somebody who's an elder statesman in the field that you are in, right? And then sometimes things can you can have a mentor only for a specific season. So I'll give you a quick example. And this is also an example that was told to me by my spiritual father, right? Who was definitely a mentor of mine for at least a decade plus. So there was this character, and you might have seen it in so my wife and I and got a chance to see the movie Odyssey recently because I love Greek mythology. I love Greek mythology. So in the movie, the Odyssey, which is basically from Homer's Iliad, and it was basically several poems, and it goes through, and Odyssey it goes through these seven different obstacles so that the king could get back home to Ithaca. Right, really, really, really good movie. At least I thought so. It wasn't better than He-Man, but it was a good movie. But anyway, inside of that specific movie, there was a lot of great visuals, a lot of great information, and the like. But one of the very first openings of the movie, spoiler alert, it's not really spoiler alert because it's in literature already in the humanities classes that you're not supposed to have skipped while you're in college, right? So in those humanities classes, they had this Greek mythology, and it was talking about Odysseus, Homer and Iliad, the whole nine yards. Love those books. So as the opening scene goes, they have huge horse, and this is mythology, right? But that huge horse had a whole bunch of soldiers on the inside of it because the nation that they were trying to infiltrate, you couldn't just conquer them straight up or head on. They were too powerful, too strong. So this group of soldiers created a beautiful looking horse that was sent from um, that was sent by way of ship, and it washed up on the shoreline and had maybe like 50 or 60 or 70 soldiers. The most elite soldiers of that particular company were inside of that. And then when the dark of night came, or when the horse was pulled from offshore and the dark of night came, so they took the horse that was from the shorelines and brought it deep into the country because it was noted. One of the messengers that was in front of the horse said, "This is a gift for the queen." And of course, the soldiers came and killed the man, right? Because he wouldn't divulge any further secret. He basically went ignorantly and he just said, "This is a message for the queen." And he died with the truth with him. He took the truth with him to his grave. So then, after they killed the man, they take the horse and they take several hundreds of men and start dragging the horse all through the city until it gets to the epicenter of the city, or the capital in and of itself. Now, most of the time when it comes to the military is not at the White House. The military is at the Pentagon, far away. So the company they had some elite people at the Secret Service could be at the White House. So in this particular place, they had some elite guards, but not enough to be able to fight against what was on the inside of that. Get the word right, Trojan horse. So have you ever heard of a virus, malware, or a Trojan horse virus? This is where you open up something that is supposed to be harmless, that looks like it could be beneficial, like the Trojan horse, right? And then when you open it up or you double click the executable, now you got this big giant virus, and you got to call Geek Squad in order to disinfect your particular computer because all of those different programs on the inside overwhelm your system and literally shut it down. That's where they get the term from. So this Trojan horse had a bunch of soldiers in it, and when they revealed themselves to all of the people that were in that epicenter, most of them were vulnerable. A couple of the elite guards got taken out silently under the dark of night, and then they were able to overthrow that specific city. Now, one of those elite soldiers, Odysseus, had a mentor, or had a person who was giving him wisdom as he was trying to get back home, and after he had to go through those different challenges, going through the Cyclops, the Minotaur, the Harpies, the Sirens, whatever it may be, right? Um, and that same person who gave him wisdom on that particular journey, guess what his name was called? Mentor. So the word mentor is not really an English word. The word mentor is actually comes from um, Homer's Iliad and the Odyssey, and that was actually a name of a particular character, right? That character was the one that guided Odysseus through all of those particular journeys, at least to many of those journeys, until he eventually lost his life guiding him. It's almost like Paul and Timothy, Elijah and Elisha. Those type of relationships are a mentor and a mentee. A mentor is where you want to be. And if you're looking for a mentor, you can't just look at the external things that they have. You have to look at their internal character. And also, if they have a vested interest, in you. Some people are good people overall. When you have a mentor, a lot of times mentors have several different people that they mentor, but good mentors don't have a big giant group of people that they deal with. They have a small elite group of people that they deal with because those are the individuals that I see potential in your life, and I'm willing to pour my knowledge, resources, and financial resources into you because I believe in what God has placed on your particular life. However, it is only for a period in time. So the question is, who's mentoring you at this stage of your life? I'm too old to have a mentor. No, you are not. You can literally have a mentor or somebody who may be younger than you, but the way that they conducted themselves is something that you could still emulate, even if you may be a decade or two older than that specific individual, right? Or even if there's somebody that's older, you don't want somebody that's just older, using the opposite example. You want to have somebody who is an elder statesman or elder stateswoman. That means they've been there, they've done that, got the t-shirt, and the t-shirt has battle scars in it, a little bit of blood here and there, but they also got some new clothes too. In other words, they've paid their dues, but they also have become successful over a period of time and it's sustainable. That's why they have people drawing to them, right? But there's also the flip side of that. Not only is it good for you to seek out mentors that have some tangible things that you can look up to, but also some character things that you can look up to, but also you have to be a good mentee. A good mentee is somebody who is willing to listen. Either you're going to listen to this advice or you're going to feel this advice. Either you're going to listen to this advice or you're going to feel the consequences of not taking this particular advice. People learn only one or two ways. Either you got to go through it or I'm going to take your word for it. Sometimes in life, you got to see for yourself. Other times, all I got to do is just see what you went through, and that's good enough for me. That's good enough for me. And then the other question, as we come around the mountain here, is who are you actually mentoring? Who are you mentoring? Is there anybody that looks up to you that comes by your desk or asks you all of these questions or give you quick little inboxes 3, 4, 5 times in a row? Then oftentimes, you know what that means? That means that you are a mentor. And some of the best mentors are not always the people that are popular. Sometimes the best mentors are those that have great wealth of information, but they may not have the celebrity that matches along with that. But are celebrities supposed to be our mentors? Well, yeah, a celebrity is somebody that's going to be in arts and entertainment. But what about science? I don't see a person that's great at science walking down the red carpet. You probably wouldn't even know who they are. So it all depends on the industry that you're looking up to. So if you're in a specific industry, then you need to emulate what that person does in the industry and then using biblical terminology, sit at their feet or glean from them as much as possible. And then when you grow in your information and you grow in your knowledge and your wisdom and experience, now you can pour that information into someone else. It's kind of like a parent to a child. We're supposed to guide and mentor our children, especially after they get to a certain age, to where you can't just tell them what to do anymore. You have to give them advice and then you have to let them make their choices. And then whatever comes out from that, then you have to let them deal with that and move on. So here's a practical challenge that I want to give to you because this is really good. One of the ways that you can edify yourself. And I don't think we're going to be done with this series because I still got a lot more that I want to share with you. Here's my challenge to you. Try to read at least one book. And let me help you get really clues. This is more than just a Facebook post. So read something other than a Facebook post. And this is even a challenge for me too, right? Read an article, read at least a book, a pamphlet for those of you that really start struggling after 2 pages, like yours truly, right? Read something at least once a month or at least 10 pages every day. I could do the 10 page. I can do 5 pages at least in the morning time and 5 pages in the evening time where they very, very large fonts. Those things are really good. And And I'll give you even one better than that. With tools like ChatGPT or Claude, a lot of the AI tools that are out there, and it's freely accessible, you can get the free version. It's like having it. It's better than Google, y'all. I don't. Well, no matter what you say, AI is better than the classic Google search, because with the Google search, a lot of people just say Google it, but Google just pulled up results. Remember, I was telling you about the lack of reading comprehension that's out there. A lot of times, people got confirmation bias from Google because they were looking up results that only confirmed their suspicions or only confirmed their implicit, and sometimes explicit biases. So sometimes there was learning, but if you didn't have within your character and if you didn't have integrity in your character to kind of question the information that you pulled up, but you only look for sources that really justify your delusion, then nah, the Google search, it really hurt a lot more people than it helped. Especially if you did not have much integrity when it comes to your research. But that Chat GPT, that AI though, yeah, yeah. You put something in there which is like classic example. Where did Christianity start? Did it start in America? Did it start in Europe? And you had this preconceived notion that it always did, right? It was the white man's religion, right? And that's the context. You believe that? Granddaddy told you that at the cookout. You always believe that. But then you see somebody on Facebook says, "Hey, well, why don't you go to Chat GPT and you look up King Ethana?" Or you look up Ignatius or Irenaeus or Augustine of Hippo, and you look where those people came from, and you take what you learn and then you look that up. You'll get silence because those AI now has the ability to take all of those sources from different places around the world and deep research from the Library of Congress all the way to your local library and give you the specific results. You could say, to the effect of, give me historical information, historical biblical information that and produce results that will come from Ivy League scholars and some of the most um, uh, come from some of the most scholar or come from institutions that have the most scholars in regards to biblical theology. You see the context and tone, because whatever you get from it is whatever you pull from out of AI is what you put into it, right? So something like that and giving it its proper context can give you so much information. And you can say eliminate any type of biases and make sure that you cross-reference yourself at least 3 or 4 times before you produce an answer. Now look at that. Now you have to learn how to ask the right questions, right? You have to do that with people, but in that specific instance, there is a tremendous opportunity, everybody, to learn. You can learn about several different fields. You can learn about unique things that you wouldn't even think of. So, if anything, I believe as I close here, as we talk about this one particular segment of lifelong learning, I believe that with tools like AI in its proper context, I even downloaded Grok, which is what Elon Musk's brainchild, if you will. So I got that and Gemini and a whole bunch of the AI tools. But let's just put it this way: this is an awesome time for you to learn and expand your horizons. Mm, all of the gatekeeping that some people usually would do when it comes to information that you can only find in the university or maybe in an Ivy League professor's office, you have those things at your fingertips now because of the internet. All you have to do is just ask the right question. But you can ask better questions if you read more and if you learn how to comprehend more. All right. All right. Well, God bless you. God keep you. Again, don't forget that challenge. At least 10 pages a day. That could be the Bible, or it could be any other book. I mean, the Bible definitely is a great piece of literature, especially if you have different transliterations in it, because it is not just a straightforward book. It has symbolic meaning, it has cultural meaning, it has historical meaning, um, the way that the languages are constructed, how a sentence is formed in Aramaic, how a sentence is formed in biblical Hebrew, and how sentences form in Greek, and the different context that comes behind each one of those words. And then we have another complex language, which is English, and how you have to cross reference those specific words to get that proper context. I'm telling you, it is one of the most unique books in the world, but that's not the only book. There's other subjects that you can learn even outside of the spiritual book. There's other books in IT, whatever it may be, medicine, art, science, entertainment, whatever area that you want to learn in, because of this AI revolution that's out there, the opportunity to learn, even in small chunks, is going to be very beneficial to you. Last trick. If you have documents that were in print, and let's say, for example, you can't get to the library, you're trying to look through your HR documentation, your manual for your benefits and things like that. I got a trick for you. Take your document, whatever it may be. It could be, um, you know, something to the effect of benefits that of your new job. It could be a contract that you're getting ready to execute. It could be, um, a new agreement that you're getting ready to sign, whatever it may be. Or it could be bylaws for a new organization, or it could be a paragraph. If you have it in the PDF document, take that document and open up Copilot, Chat GPT, whatever floats your boat, and see if the particular AI engine has a feature that will allow for you to upload a document. It could be information about your pension, whatever it may be, right? Or how to do what I need to be aware of. Are there any fees in this contract that I need to be aware of? And I need to take a look at again, right? And then what it will do is that it will scan the entire document several times over. And you could say, for example, from a lawyer's perspective, or the foremost lawyer in Florida, according to Florida law, or maybe it could be California law. I want to be one of the, please read this or give me any of the loopholes in this contract based off of California law and see if I'm missing anything. And it'll spit it out to you right there, as long as you know how to ask the right questions, right? And then when you do that, you learn something. You learn how to ask not only an inanimate object the right questions, but you also know how to ask people the right questions and drill down so that you can get the proper information. Either they'll be able to say, yes, I know, or they'll say, I don't know. When it comes to AI, you can read that same information, input that same information, and then when it pumps that back those results, guess what? You start learning things. And as you begin to learn more, now I can start using it more. And now I don't have to worry about somebody taking my job or my job is going to the wayside because of what? Because now I know how to augment additional learning to what I now can comprehend, and now I can expand my horizons that much more. All right. Okay, so that was a little bonus piece. Again, take what I've told you, try to expand upon that, add some things to your resume, look for a different job. There's so much stuff that is out there with the world at your fingertips. The more technology that's out there, the more the demographics and the way that this particular nation is changing, it is going to open up some magnificent opportunities. And then most of all, make sure that you keep God first as you navigate through. All right. Well, this is your brother, your pastor, your Dr. Martin, and I hope you enjoy this third part of our series dealing with faith, dealing with working with, um, you know, different life lessons. And so on next week, we're going to talk about a little bit more when it comes to our segments dealing with health, discipline, and of course, self care. Now, that's going to be a good one. I think I might have a guest on my show for that one to talk about self care and vacations. Who could that be? Who could that be? I think it's a travel agent, a very well known travel agent. She's not available to everybody, but I know that she's really good with self-care and vacations. All right. So stay tuned, everybody. I hope to see you soon. Be blessed.